All right, guys, we're back again. Another week, another fire guest. One that I am really, really pleased with today, and I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this conversation as much as I will. Um, I've got today with me the founder, sorry, apologies, founder of Jamii UK, and it's going to be an interesting conversation because we've yet to have someone on the show who probably has dabbled in the e-commerce space and kind of the marketplace space, I should say. We've had a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of athletes, a lot of sports personnel people, but not quite like yourself. So welcome to the show, Khalia Ismain.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. You actually weren't wrong. I'm co-founder of Jamii.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah,
wanted to get it right. I
yeah.
couldn't remember. But I think it's going to be, like I said, a dope conversation for a lot of reasons because I want to get into obviously your backstory, how you got to co-found Jamii and what Jamii's all about. But I think I want to actually start with in thinking about, because we had a conversation obviously offline, in thinking about the gap that you mentioned you wanted to fill and stuff like that. Was entrepreneurship, was actually thinking about co-founding your own business, etc. Was that actually something that you kind of always had in mind? Was that something that you know I guess was set out to do? Like, kind of talk me through that a little bit.
No, not really. I kind of so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I knew from when I was like 16, I knew I had like an interest in politics. So I did it at
Oh
A
wow.
level. Then I went to University of Manchester. I did politics, philosophy, and economics. Basically because someone told me that's what all the politicians do. So
Okay.
I was like, all right, calm, I'll do that. But it was very much a case of like the closer I got to politics, the more I learned about it, the more I was like, no, this is not for
Yes.
me. But when I was at uni, I kind of learned about this concept of like, social enterprise or kind of partnering like purpose and profit and things like that,
Yeah.
which I found pretty interesting. I joined like a university society called the Manchester Entrepreneurs Society just to learn a bit more about it and stuff like that. And I always had a lot of kind of respect and admiration for people who ran their own businesses because it was like you've literally created something from nothing, like something that's in your head.
Yeah.
But I never really had an idea or had a desire to be that person myself. It was just like, wow, what you guys do is amazing. That's super cool. But then when I graduated, so I graduated in 2015. So this is around the time of like the first wave of the Black Lives Matter movement. Like there was a lot of conversations at the time around that subject. I think even one of the co-founders of the movement even came to our university at one point. Like we were
Wow.
super active. So it was a topic that I was thinking about a lot. People that I was around were talking about it a lot. And then one day I had a conversation with Jamii's co-founder, literally just about like, I wonder what it would take to really get people to support Black-owned businesses just on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's obviously not the only thing that people can do or should be doing
Yeah.
in order to kind of achieve real equality. But it is something which like average people can
Yeah.
do and it can make a huge impact. And so we were just thinking, because, at the time it was like, oh, there's a lot of directories around. But there was something about it that just it didn't seem like it was working.
Yeah.
Like every time I Googled a directory, it was always, out of
I've been
date
there.
and the
I've
links
definitely
didn't
been there.
work. And, like it was just like, oh, this is just not a great experience. And so like, it was his suggestion. He was like, but what if there was like an incentive, like a discount card or something? And I was like, oh my goodness, like that's genius. And so we had that idea in like summer 2015 and then literally did nothing with it for months because I went to Kenya for 3 months,
Okay.
basically part of like an international citizenship program thing, where I was basically there for 3 months. I was in a small town, basically an extra pair of hands for a bunch of business owners, just helping out on different things. And it was while I was there, I kind of realized like what it's really like to be a small business owner. And it is just a case of like, no one ever knows what they're doing. You just have to be brave, take things day by day.
Organized chaos
It's
most of
all,
the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so when I was there, I was like, oh, actually, I think I should do something about this idea because no one else seems to be doing anything. So I was just like, okay, well, I'll at least start it and then we'll see kind of what happens from there. So in a way, I kind of fell into it. It wasn't something which I was doing like because I was like, oh, this is going to be my route to riches or anything like that. I was just like, no one else is doing anything like this. So I feel like I kind of should.
No, it's interesting because, and the reason why, I ask that question is because we have a lot of entrepreneurs on the show, and it often comes up where just similar story to you, actually, they just kind of fell into things, or it was by accident, like they discovered a niche or some kind of gap and they just went for it. So I was just curious as to, were you like, a young Gary V out here selling baseball cards or like, sweets in school or whatever the case is. So
no. I feel bad when people ask me that stuff, because you always hear people who are like, oh, I've been hustling from early, and I'm like, no, that wasn't me,
Yeah, no, I mean, everyone's journey is different. That's why I think yours is so unique, and I really liked it, and I'm pleased to have you on the show because I think it offers a different perspective. For a lot of people who are listening today, your journey's, your journey. So a lot of people might have traveled the same route. They might have, been through certain things that you have, like went to uni, came up with an idea, left it a while, might want to come back to it, etc. So this is actually quite good that you were able to go back and, bring it to life. And, we're definitely going to get into a bit more about it today. But I do want to go back because, like myself, you're, West Indian, proud West Indian. Shouts out to all the West Indians out there. And I know, I guess for me growing up, the thought of, business and ownership and those conversations weren't, very prevalent in my household. It weren't really kind of discussed. It was about, get a good job, good benefits, all that good stuff. So take me back to maybe the dynamics of, when you were coming up, when you were growing up, like with your family, with your parents, siblings, etc. Were those conversations being had, or was it an exposure? Were you exposed to anything of that sort?
No, mine was very similar. It was very much like, get a job.
Yeah, it's like, how old are you now?
Yeah. It was very much, get a job. Like, what else would you do? Like, just get a job. But I was very fortunate. So I didn't grow up like surrounded by business owners or anything, but I did grow up surrounded by teachers. So my mum, she's English, she was a teacher. Her dad was a teacher, and I think for that reason, like they had a really strong understanding of like children and how to like facilitate great imagination and just self-assuredness and confidence in kids.
I like that.
And so I grew up not overconfident, but I grew up with a certain self-assuredness about me. And my sister's the same, actually, about just kind of feeling like I kind of can do it. And if I don't do it, or if I do it and it fails, it's not really the end of the world. It is what it is. Yeah. And both her and my dad always kind of trusted my judgment to the degree that it was like, if I said, oh, I'm going to start a business, and they were kind of a bit like, okay. I mean, like, obviously I didn't quit my job to start a business. Like, I did it on the side for a while. And so they were just like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. And they are so, so supportive. Like, my mom helps fulfill all the orders. Like, when it was in the summer of 2020, things like absolutely exploded for us. And I was, we were like, so many orders were coming through and I couldn't cope. And my mum was like, I will do them for you. Like, I will send them out. I'll pack them for you. When we did pop-up shops, my dad was like, I will come and help you in the shop, like all of this stuff. So, and like same with my uncles, my cousins, like they all come down to everything that we
Family
do.
affair.
Yeah. Wow. Like, they are like my biggest supporters and ambassadors. So, I mean, yeah, like that's the kind of family that I come from. Like, we're all riders,
Yeah. I love that so much because, as the saying goes, it takes a village, right? And it seems like that's what you had around you. And you mentioned something that was quite, I guess, unique about your circumstance, where you said you were surrounded by teachers and you had that confidence instilled in you from a very early age, or at least that confidence to try. And I speak to a lot of people and, the conversation is about, yeah, but what if it doesn't work? Yeah, I don't know if I should. And, I myself, kind of had that in my earlier days when I was thinking about starting a business, or I was thinking about venturing off and doing something that's not as safe as, getting a 9 to 5, having a steady paycheck, all that stuff. So how has that kind of I guess, propelled you or even helped you now in these later stages from that early age where, you said your mum and your dad, they were very much like, we trust your judgment, we trust what you do. Go off and try if you feel it is what it is. How has that kind of transcended to how you more or less go about making decisions probably today?
I think it's definitely given me a sense of fearlessness. Actually, no, that's not right, because it's not that I operate without fear. I definitely operate with fear. But like, I think it's given me a sense of just kind of like, feel the fear and do it anyway, kind of stuff. Like, and I think also for me, I'm a kind of person where it's just like, fear is not a good enough reason to not do something. It's just not, and I think the thing that propels me the most is just not wanting to have regrets. Like, I don't want to regret not doing this because I was scared.
Yeah.
Because that's not a good enough reason for not doing something. And I think that's something which whenever I make a decision about, okay, are we going to go down this route or go down that route? And I do have like that knot in my stomach. Like, I do have to sit with myself and be like, is this fear or is this a gut feeling?
Yeah.
And if it's a gut feeling, then it's like, you know what, this opportunity is not for me. But if it's fear, it's just like, what am I afraid of? Like, break it down. Like, I'll speak to my mom and like, she's just like my sounding board. I'll just call her and I'll just speak at her for like 20 minutes. And then by the end of it, I'll come to the end of my thought and I'll be like, oh, thanks for a great chat, mum. And she'll be like, yeah, sure.
Anytime. That's why I'm here.
Literally.
Nah, that's amazing. Because, I think that, my mum's similar as well. She'll hear me out. She'll definitely give her opinion as well. But I've definitely got a group of, I guess, people around me who I do kind of rely on, or I have that sounding board, like similar to you. So in terms of, already seeing that you had quite a quite blessed and really strong, support network in your family. But in terms of the friends and, that dynamic, were your friend circle, similar in the sense of how, you were willing to take these risks? Were you surrounded by, like-minded people, or was it completely, the opposite?
So it's an interesting question. So of my friends, I'm the only one who is quote unquote an entrepreneur.
Really?
Yeah. But like, all of my friends are like absolutely killing it in their respective fields. Another one of my friends has literally just released like this groundbreaking book series. She's like a publisher. She's like absolutely killing it in that industry. Shout out to A Quick Ting On if anyone is listening.
Come on.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like a book series about Black British culture. I could talk about it for ages, but that's not what this episode's about. But check it out after. But no. So all of my friends are absolutely killing it in their respective fields. Like the ones that I met at uni, the ones that I've had from school, and so. Even though, they're not entrepreneurs, like I've always had their support. Again, they always turn up to everything that I do. They put their money where their mouth is, or where their heart is, rather. Like they've been amazing at every step. They always say my name or Jamii's name in important rooms and things like that. And I think I've been very fortunate that I have been surrounded by people like that. And I think also, kind of touching on something that you said earlier, it's like, it's important for people to recognize, like, when you have a business, even if you're like the only person who is getting paid from the business, like, a business has always got a team of people behind it. Even if 100%. It's just they're doing the emotional labor for you, they're like picking you up when
sweat equity is important.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, they don't have to literally do anything, but sometimes, my friends have just turned up when we've done market stalls. They've just turned up and stood on the table with me, like, just to hang out. Do you know what I mean? Love just to be like, I didn't want you to be lonely. And that is the kind of stuff, like, if they hadn't done that, I probably would have burned out a lot sooner. Or
it's I think it's so underestimated how important a role those people around you do play, especially in your early journey. When you're coming up, when the grind is real, when you're just, almost like you said, to that point of burnout. Just whether it's words of encouragement, whether it's just having people around you who are, just winning you on, just keep going. And I've had conversations like that, because there's been times where I'm like, I can't bother to just drive to this F, like, it's long. But it's one of those things where, I'm passionate about the field, I'm passionate about what we're doing and the mission that we're on and what we're building. And, to hear stories and bring to life stories like what you've done and what you've achieved, that's important for me. That's important for hopefully the audience to listen, to watch, and try and get a grasp of, how maybe they themselves can, apply. It doesn't have to be creating a marketplace, but it could be anything, right? And just know that it's possible. So it's important for us to kind of let people like yourself be out there and be known, and your story as well. So getting into that story, in terms of Jamii, actually, why did you name it Jamii?
Oh,
I was curious about
yeah. So Jamii means community in Swahili.
Okay.
So when I was trying to think of a name, because I wanted a name, Jamii's co-founder and I wanted a name that felt really inclusive, because we knew from early, like, it was important to get everyone behind this mission of supporting Black-owned businesses. And so we wanted a name that felt like something that anyone and everyone could get behind.
Yeah.
And when I was trying to work out names and stuff, I was talking to one of my friends from Kenya, who suggested, oh, why don't you use a name like, a Swahili word or something? And I was like, okay, well, I started chucking out words. And then eventually he was like, oh, well, community means, Jamii means community.
There you go.
In Swahili, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. Like, that's great. And so that's the story,
Really?
basically. Yeah.
No, it's a sick name. Like, when I
Yeah.
first heard about it, obviously shouts out to Deborah for making this happen. If you haven't checked her out on our previous episode, do so. But I thought, oh, Jamii, that's because I guess in the Caribbean as well, when you're saying something is Jamii, it's not too, it's kind of a good thing, I guess, in terms of context. It's how you use it. But I was like, oh, that's actually a cool name. So it's good to hear the origin of it and kind of how it came about. So that's cool. So talk me through, because you mentioned something earlier, actually, that I wanted to touch on in terms of your trip to Kenya and getting involved with, I guess, purpose-led, kind of missions and stuff like that. And it obviously ties into your business acumen and how you guys now run Jamii and what it stands for, which we'll get into. But has that been rooted in yourself from, I guess, a young age, in terms of, and the reason I ask that question is because oftentimes I actually had this same conversation about, probably earlier today, around our culture and what it means to us, and how we quote unquote protect it, and how people, take from our culture, and, it always seems to not be reciprocated in any way, shape or form. So understanding, what mission I guess you're on now and the importance of it, and obviously going to Kenya and that trip, and you said it opened up your eyes to really looking into, getting a probably first-hand view of, business and kind of what it takes. Was that something that you discovered at a later stage in your life, in terms of, like, who you are, what you represent as a Black woman, really kind of putting yourself out there and building Jamii to what it is now, and, having it be a staple in the community?
Actually, no. So like I said, my mum's white, but she's a teacher. And she, when I was growing up in like the early 90s, she went out of her way to make sure I was surrounded by Black things. Like, my toys were Black, my books were Black.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was
That's
the early
dope.
90s.
Yeah,
like, this was not
dope.
easy. Yeah, this was not easy.
Can imagine. Shouts out to mum.
Yeah. And like my dad and his brothers were always, they weren't necessarily like super duper pro Black, but they, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like they were like, I was watching, documentaries on like Rodney King and Marvin, and all of these, important
historic Black
moments.
figures. Yeah, absolutely.
From early, I remember one of my uncles, when I was about 9, gave me a book which was the A to Z of Black heroes. And I read that book like a million times. Like,
wow.
It was for kids, but it was everything to me. I loved it so much. And it was all African Americans, I think, apart from maybe one person who, Shaka Zulu from South Africa. But like, it was like, I loved it so much. And he always gave me comic books which had Black characters in, which now I think about, I have no idea where he got. But like, but it's always,
far and few in between.
Yeah. But I always grew up with like a sense of, you're Black and you're part of the Black community, and this is the history of the Black community. Of course there was oppression, and of course there was suffering, but here's also pride. And my dad in particular, he's a lad from Bermondsey, like he was always like, he was always like Black British. Like, so obviously, like, until recently, African American culture has had such an impact on like the Black experience here as well.
Absolutely.
But he's always like, you're Black British, and so I always like really loved being Black British kind of thing, which I think is a uniquely Caribbean thing, because the Caribbeans came over before. Like when I speak to my friends who are of African heritage, like they're more like, no, I'm Ghanaian or I'm whatever. I'm like, well, see what your kids say, what they say, what you are, but like
that's so true.
Yeah, but I always had this thing in me about I'm Black British and kind of loving what that meant, and because obviously that my nan is Jamaican, my granddad was St. Lucia, but like was from St. Lucia, but having that culture meet London and meet England, it's like something different to what it is over there.
It's different.
So I was always super proud of it, but obviously kind of knowing that as a child, you do have to go through a process of like what that means as an adult 100%. As well, which I think where kind of like the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff that happened between like 2013 2015 was pretty formative for me, because I say all this stuff but I still have my hair straight all the time. It wasn't until I was like 19 20 that I started having my curly hair out on a regular basis that I started to really learn how to care for it and stuff like that.
Wow, that's crazy you say that. I had and there's so many, I guess, gems in what you just said, because me myself, growing up West Indian and having, pretty much all of my family were definitely, very pro-Black and stuff like that, but it was a lot of stuff that I realized I had to almost learn but also unlearn in my later years. And this journey it's been phenomenal, because it's really starting to get me a lot more connected and deep rooted in my ancestry and my roots and stuff like that, and just learning, like you said, about that pride, that triumph that's sometimes swept under the carpet or just not even mentioned. It's not all despair, it's not all heartache that we went through. There's actually like really powerful moments in our history. So it's just kind of really taking making an emphasis, making a point to really learn that and teach it as much as I can, to those who care to listen. So that's quite interesting. But I think one of the things that I'm now really keen on is how do we, as a people, as a community, that's why it's so important and stuff that you guys are building, how are we able to kind of galvanize that and really kind of move in the same direction? Because oftentimes, like you said, with my African friends, it's the same thing. It's like, nah, bro, like you stay over there. This is where my roots are. And I respect that so much, so highly. Like I was saying about the culture piece, it's oftentimes like, you can see Ghanaian culture, you can tell like Nigerian, like, like it's clear for everyone. But even like in America, you wouldn't really say there's an African American culture. It's almost like the music and sports kind of speak for that, but they're not dressing like, how Africans would dress, in their robes and kind of like their native kind of garments and stuff like that. It's not like that. So it's an interesting conversation, and one that I probably have way more than I care to be honest, sometimes. But it's necessary, right? And it leads me to my next question, which is, in your journey to start Jamii and understanding kind of the mission that you guys are on and what you wanted to actually do and build a company on, was it important to have that identity, in terms of like like you said, the BLM movement came about and that was great. But was that, kind of the driving force between, right, how can we get as many people, especially from the community, supporting the community and other businesses in the community?
Yeah. So sorry, I was thinking about everything that you were saying.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. No. I think the first thing I would say just about is the comparison between like African American community and Black British, because like we've got very different histories.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the African American community has been in existence for, hundreds of years in the same places, like for hundreds of years. So I think like to say, I there is definitely an African American culture, but I think like it's I know what you're saying about it's like it's not African.
Yeah,
it's like it
exactly.
literally is the hybrid.
Yeah.
Like it's African American. Like, do you know what I mean?
Just kind of floats
Yeah,
around
yeah,
there,
yeah. Whereas like with our community, like we know our heritage a lot more. Like, you know, we are from, like, you know, I can trace my heritage back to a specific place in Jamaica or even further back. Do you know what
absolutely.
I mean? Whereas I think it's different over there.
Yeah.
I think for us, it was really important for us to be Black British and to like that's who we are. That's the only experience we know. So that's something which was always important to us from the beginning. But it's interesting because we actually started before like Black British culture became like this kind of big thing, like, you know, where it started moving into the mainstream.
What was that like?
It was interesting, actually. Like it was interesting because even though like we always knew like Black British, but like it was an interesting about the language we used. Like we started off saying African and Caribbean because like that was the language people were using at the time. You have to kind of speak to what people know.
Yeah.
And I think it was around 2017, so after we've been doing it for like a year, that we started saying Black British. Like it's because, you know, that is what it is. But our tone of voice, our personality had always been that, but we just didn't use that as like the language because people kind of like knew like African and Caribbean. But I think what's really important though about any community initiative is that you can't lead from the front. Like you can't try and organize a community. That is not how it works at all. It always comes from the bottom. It comes from groups at the bottom. And I think especially in our community where we've got, for like literally like you said, you've got people who don't even identify in the same way. Like, so, you know, you've got, you know, your Jamaicans and you've got your St. Lucians or your Bajans, but then also you've got your Ghanaians, you've got your Ethiopians, you've got your the Congolese, like, you know, all of this. And the differences between us are just as important as the similarities, like, because the differences are beautiful kind of thing. And trying to get a group of people who have not spent the last 300, 400 years together in the same space, having the same experience is your net. Like even in like African Americans complain about not getting African Americans on the same page. So like, you know, it's not going to happen like that with us. But that's okay. I think it's just important to recognize that. It's important not to try and do that because you're not going to get super far like that. But instead, we need to be empowering from the bottom, you know, empowering like the community groups, the community organizations, people who are organizing on a much smaller level, and people who are thinking about, okay, well, how can we collaborate? How can we move together as one? And then whoever wants to follow us can follow. Which is something which we've always kind of done. Like, you know, you kind of said about how important is it to us that we have Black British support in supporting the Black British community. Yeah, it's very important. But also there will be some people from the community who really don't care about what we're doing. And that's okay. Because there are also a lot of people outside of the community who really care about what we're doing. And so we care about people who care about what we're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense. I suppose it's one of those things where, you know, you're not going to get everyone.
No.
And that's fine. Like you said, you know, it's about, number one, meeting people where they are, I think, in this journey of celebrating blackness and black excellence and all that stuff. Like, not everyone is on board. Not everyone is probably as vocal or maybe as into it as others are, and that's fine. You know, to each their own. But I guess it's fascinating because it doesn't take away, you know, like you said, from the mission and what you guys are building. So let's talk about the business model, because I find it quite interesting, and I'm like, how can I use this? How can I utilize this as well? So for people out there, everyone's listening, everyone's watching, you know, the concept and how you guys came up with the business model. Can you just break that down and just explain it, you know, just for those who don't know?
Yeah, so kind of touched on it before that, you know, we started out as a discount card for Black-owned businesses, which is what it sounds like. So the point of it was to get people thinking of Black makers whenever they had something to buy, because we kind of identified that, you know, when things are trending on social media, everyone starts talking about, what can I do? How can I make a difference? Oh, we should support Black-owned businesses. Let's get a thread going of Black-owned businesses that we support. You know, all of that stuff, which is great for awareness. But it's like, but then when, you know, Monday rolls around and like, you know, if Arsenal's lost, or do you know what I mean? Like people's attention is fleeting. And it's just the case, we were just like, okay, how can we it's clear that people have intentions. How can we move people from intentions to actions? clearly there is a missing piece here.
Yeah.
And so for us at the time, we were like, okay, if let's come up with this concept of this discount card. Let's literally incentivize people to think of black makers when they've got something to buy. For the customer, it's great because they get a discount. They are, and whenever people have discounts, they always think about it. From the business's perspective, like for them, it was literally like a marketing cost. It encourages customers to try businesses that they might not have tried before. It encourages repeat custom. And so it was just a case of, it seemed like a win-win, situation. And it was working. But then as time went on, we would get customer feedback, or we get feedback from our partners, like that basically made us think we can do more here. Like there's more that can be done. So, our partnered businesses were saying to us like, oh, it would be great if you, organized marketplaces or organized shops or did workshops for us and stuff like that. And we were talking to our customers and we realized that, the way that the platform was built at the time, there was just too many clicks.
Yeah.
Like it was too much work on their side, to whatever. And so we were like, okay, we were like, okay, we'll transition into an online marketplace. So all the orders happen on our site, and that's great because then we also can see data, like everything that we are doing becomes a lot more efficient and effective, and we can also kind of like say, oh, okay, well, if this condition is doing really well and this one's not, like I wonder what's going on here, and make suggestions, whatever, remove a lot of the friction from the process for the customers to kind of increase conversions and all that good stuff. And then we started doing events, obviously, then COVID hit, and threw all of that kind of out of the window. But then, in August 2020, we did our very first pop-up shop. We've done 4 in total now since then. We've actually got 2 coming up, which in May, which I'm really, really excited about. Nice. 1 in London and 1 in Birmingham.
I was hoping you say Manchester.
You know what? We were thinking about Manchester, but it's too far. Not this time. Maybe we'll see how Birmingham goes. And we've evolved like various things. We started doing gift boxes now as well. Like we partnered with bigger organizations than us to kind of deliver different initiatives. Like we partnered with an out-of-home advertiser last year called Clear Channel to give free billboards to black-owned businesses. Wow. We partnered with Pinterest to release a short film called Legacy. Our Christmas pop-up was the result of a partnership with Airbnb. Our pop-ups that we're coming up with in May are the result of a partnership with Lloyds Bank. And essentially, like the mission, how we do what we do, we're a bit indifferent to. As long as it fulfills the mission, like we see gaps in the ecosystem. Yeah. And we know exactly what our place is and how we can fill it. And we do as much as we can to fill those gaps and to signpost people. If obviously people come to us and like, oh, can you introduce us to investors? And we're like, we're not in the investor space, but I'll tell you an organization that is.
You're like, oh, Khalia, give me a VC.
Yeah, honestly, we've had so many and sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, maybe we should do this, and then it's like, no, just like sometimes you have to stay in your lane and focus on just executing in that lane. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that whole journey, and thank you for explaining that, because I obviously understand it and we had previous conversations, but I think it gives context to, number one, those who didn't know about Jamii. Obviously they understand kind of the mechanics behind it, how it works, and maybe how it can benefit them as a consumer, and also these black businesses who are on the platform as well. And I think the partnerships that you mentioned are just amazing, and it's good to see that these larger enterprises are willing to, take that, I guess, we'll call it a risk, but want to take, those partnerships, those collaborations with you guys, because, some of the conversations we have is often how, like you actually mentioned, it's funny you mentioned that, how do we get more investment? How do we get more funding from these organizations that are going about that? And even I myself was involved in these conversations as well. And it's like, it's difficult. It's not easy, and that's probably why people are coming to you like, how do I do this? But it's one of those things where I think, more of these collaborations, more of these partnerships that you guys are hopefully doing can open up the door and really kind of, leave a bit of a blueprint, for people to hopefully follow and, make some kind of gains or some advances on. So yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I think I mentioned to you when we spoke earlier on in the week whether you're looking to go outside the UK and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was already jumping the gun, but like you said, it's important also to kind of recognize, staying in your lane and obviously taking full advantage of that. But what's the plan, beyond, I guess, the poppers that are coming up, in terms of Jamii? I guess that, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 year plan. Anything that you guys can share, any exclusives?
You know what? People always ask me this, and I don't ever know how to respond because I always have a million ideas. So it's like you ask me on a different day, you'll get a slightly different answer. Essentially, like what the plan is for this year, at least, is to do what we do, but to do it extremely well. Like the last 2 years have been chaos. And it's been great chaos, but kind of when everything kind of happened in the aftermath of George Floyd, that changed the global landscape. And for us, it just kind of like accelerated a huge amount of things that we were doing. And kind of since then, we have not necessarily been playing catch up, but we've had so many opportunities come our way. We've tried so many new things. We've executed like things that, a few years ago I was literally just manifesting. Like, we had a billboard at Christmas. Like that was incredible. Things like that. Like, and this year is just about us not doing lots of new things, but doing the things that we know we can do really, really well. And that's kind of actually our focus, like being like just improving our expertise, I suppose, in a way, like becoming like best in class, rather than kind of focusing on like expanding and trying new lanes and stuff like that.
Probably spreading yourself too thin, but I think, like you said, it's just doubling down on the strengths, what you guys do well, and just looking at the model, there's so much growth because every day I'm trying to speak to myself personally as many black businesses as I can, as many black entrepreneurs that are out there, or just people in the community in general who are like, they want to move the culture forward in a positive way. They're doing things that can better our people, in whatever capacity, whatever lane they're choosing. So that's dope that you guys are thinking about, right, let's just dominate in this space. Because you're right, I don't think, or at least off the top of my head, I don't know of anyone else that's kind of doing similar things to you. Like you said,
there's not anyone. We're the only ones, and we're the best ones.
The links are out there, the directives are out there. But that's why it's so cool. That's why it's so dope, and it's a really good model. And it was important, one, for me to just kind of get familiar, and represent, support however I can, but also try and get it out to as many people as we can. So those guys are like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, and like I said, if they want to collaborate, if they want to get in touch as well, and that was actually one of my next questions. How many people are coming to you in terms of seeking advice, mentorship? Is that something that you actually do or take on as well?
Yeah. I actually do mentoring, like not. So I didn't really see myself as like a mentor. Like, I'm very much a person where like all I can do is tell you my perspective and tell you my experience and hear what you're saying and just share thoughts on that. And that I will never be like, this is what you need to do and just, whatever. It's up to the person to do whatever they want. And I always say to people, like, take it with a pinch of salt. If you think I'm talking rubbish,
disclaimer.
Yeah, no, well, it's just like, because I've had conversations with people that seem very, they seem very confident in themselves and they, have the experience on paper. And then some of the things they say, and you're just like, I'm not sure about that. But it's like, so I always say to people, like, just translate whatever I'm saying to your experience. If it doesn't sit right with you, then discard it. Like, don't listen. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's
but yeah,
you say that.
no, but it's true. Like, it has to sit with you because at the end of the day, like, you're the decision maker and you are the it's gonna rise and fall with you kind of thing. But yeah, no, I do mentoring sessions. Like, I'm actually a Google mentor, and I'm a mentor for Hatch Enterprise, which is like a really great organization that helps female founders and founders from disadvantaged backgrounds. So yeah, basically almost all of my mentees are women or black women.
Love that.
Yeah.
That. That's so dope.
But yeah, no, I love it actually. It's really interesting to kind of like see so many other entrepreneurs and what they're doing. And almost anyone who decides to speak to me is someone who is doing something with purpose involved. And it's great to speak to someone who's passionate about what they're doing. It's just
Talk on it, because I actually, that's a great segue, because I do remember you mentioning, kind of purpose led, and for me, that's again everything that we do on the network, everything we do with the company at the moment. It says Brian was along, like it literally does what it says on the tin. So for you, how important is it in terms of that purpose led, kind of piece in terms of what you're building and what you're doing? And yeah, how important is that? I'll answer the other question afterwards.
Yeah. Nothing else matters to Jamii apart from its mission.
Love
and obviously
that.
keeping the lights on. But
Gotta pay the bills.
Yeah, paying the bills. But no, but that's literally, and that's why, when I listed off the million things that we do.
Yeah.
Like that's why, because I didn't set Jamii up because I wanted to set up a marketplace or because I wanted to run a shop. It's set up because we wanted to see a difference in the world. And that's why we're open to opportunities in terms of like how exactly we make that difference come about.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I recently, I would say, I've really started connecting with people who share that same vision, and it's completely different. And yeah, like you said, you got to pay your bills, keep the lights on, all that stuff. But it's just a different feeling when you're, led by a innate purpose, that you can't really sometimes even explain. Or it's not like, oh, I want to make X amount from this venture or that, but it's like, it just feels good, and you're doing it for all the right reasons, to help people, to be of service, to bring others along, in this case. So yeah, and that's, kind of ties into our mission a lot of the time in terms of the people that we speak to, is how many people can we impact, can we affect with stories like yourself, through documentaries that we're looking to do, through just storytelling, and especially from the black kind of diaspora in terms of all walks of life. 'Cause like you said, people I speak to in the Caribbean are very different in terms of the conversations I have with people from the continent and from America and all these different places. But it's beautiful because all of those stories hold a special place in, each and every one of us in terms of what we represent. So yeah, it's super dope, man. So I guess I want to almost say what's next, but I feel like there's 1 trillion things that you've just got kind of coming up and stuff like that. But if the people wanted to obviously get in touch, kind of reach out and kind of just support, like you said, how can they get in touch either with you? I'm sure you'll have like, just hopefully anyways, people will be like, oh, how can I get a mentorship? I'm sure that's probably how it's going to happen. But yeah, how can people get in touch with Jamii? How can they support all that good stuff?
Yeah, so Jamii, our website is lovejamii.com, which is LOVEJAMII.com. On Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, our social handle is at UK Jamii, which is UKJAMII. But yeah, if you want to get in touch with me personally, Khalia Ismain, at Khalia Ismain on Instagram is the best place. I will probably not reply to you on the other ones.
That's so funny. Usually people are like, no, don't.
No, people are always like, oh, message me on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I will not get to it. But like, yeah, Instagram is my guilty pleasure. So like, I will see it on Instagram. But it's just at Khalia Ismain, KHALIAISMAI. And I had to make sure I spelled that right.
Watching you trying to spell your name is
I've spelled it wrong before, and it's just it's like I obviously know how to spell my own name, but like when you're being recorded, you're like, oh my god, I can't get this wrong.
The pressure. No, that's funny. Nah, Khalia, I think it's so amazing what you guys are doing and what you're building, and I just wanted to thank you first of all for being on the show, because we obviously just hooked up briefly. Like I said, through Deborah, who's like one of my favorite people right now, in terms of just her energy and who she is. She's amazing. But hearing your story and kind of the journey from her, and then speaking to yourself, I was like, yeah, no way, we need to get you on, because I get a lot of messages and DMs from people, especially black women as well, actually, because black women are just killing it in terms of starting their own businesses, just getting on that entrepreneurship vibe. And I think it's a great representation to have people like yourself in the ecosystem. We know all too well there's all types of craziness going on, and representation isn't always the best, but it's good to see people like you who are kind of championing that movement and that, somewhat the forefront. I'm sure there are others out there, and we'll get to you guys sooner rather than later. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for being on the show, sharing your story, and kind of giving the audience a flavour for what Jamii's all about. And hopefully, a lot more people will be tapping in and following the journey, seeing what you guys are all about.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great conversation. Really good question. But yeah, I would say if anyone is thinking about starting a business, there's so much support out there for Black founders right now, whether you're, wanting to go into tech, or you're a maker, you're, a beautician, whatever it might be. There is so much support. Like, now is literally the best time to try and get started with something. There's so much in the ecosystem.
I know.
So don't hesitate. Don't let fear be the reason that you don't.
Yeah. No, I love what you said just now. Fear can't be the reason why you don't do something. Like, there definitely needs to be a bigger reason. And you're absolutely right. We found it, say, easy, but definitely a lot more accepting in terms of like the conversations we're trying to have with people, in terms of ventures we want to start, businesses we want to get started with as well, and just the support, I guess, is there. Obviously there needs to be a good reason to get the support, but yeah, I would definitely echo that. I'll make sure that if you are trying to start your business or whatever you're trying to do, it doesn't necessarily have to be starting your business, but if you're trying to get a message out there or build some kind of brand or anything like that, absolutely just put one foot in front of the other and just move forward. Simple as that. Right, guys, so as we wrap up, as always, tradition on the show, we basically get our guests to bring someone along, recommend someone who can sit in that chair or wherever we are at the time, and basically share their story, their journey, kind of inspire, motivate, hopefully get the audience, giving them a few gems. So anyone from your network, anyone who you would like to recommend to bring along on the show?
So yeah, definitely there's two people I'm thinking of. One of them is Jamii from Lendo, who basically Lendo lends money to underrepresented founders, people who are kind of struggling to access other routes of finance. It's an incredible organization, and they actually have kind of been responsible for hundreds of thousands of pounds being borrowed by Black owned businesses in particular. And he's just doing incredible things and has been doing incredible things for years. And then Cecil, who's the co-founder of Foundervine, which is another amazing organization that helps Black founders, specifically like Black founders who want to get into tech, but they are also kind of venturing out into other industries as well. They do a lot of programs, accelerators, meetups, networking, and all of those things. That. So yeah, when I was saying like there's a lot of help in the ecosystem, there's a lot of help in the ecosystem.
No, that's so good. And I guess, I appreciate that, because we'll definitely be, trying to get those guys on. We'll definitely follow up with them. But I think it's so important as well, because yes, you do hear that notion of, there's no help for Black businesses and maybe we're underrepresented. And that's all true. Let's not, mix our words. But at the same time, there are people, like the guys that you mentioned who are out here, trying to fight the good fight, and get us on the straight and narrow. So yeah, I appreciate that. We'll definitely be chasing up and borderline harassing those guys as well to get them on the show. But yeah, guys, thanks once again, obviously for the support, for all of the messages. Thanks again for tapping in with us this week, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.